like they're lining up. Well, they're excited.
Hi guys, welcome back. You already know what it is. We are the Sons of Mjolnir. I'm Gorgon.
I'm Fat Thor.
And I'm Cop.
And today we're here to talk to you guys about Thor, Love and Thunder, Thor 4, all the Thors. Let's go. How do you guys like the movie?
Oh, man. Yeah, I mean, you guys already know what I thought, and I'm going to give a little quick warning for the whole episode. Take my opinions with a little grain of salt, because obviously I have some bias. So I want to hear from you guys first. So overall thoughts, like, you know, just we'll get into the nitty gritty stuff, but just your overall first opinion after you saw the movie. What'd you guys think? Gorgon, you want to start it off?
Yeah, I walked out of the theater and I was like, that was good. Twitter, I feel like has tore the movie apart for a month before the movie even came out. And that kind of feels not fair to a movie, right? That people already made up their mind before it happened and were tearing it apart online. So I went in just really wanted to see for myself what was up with the movie as a member of Comic Twitter and see how it was. And I remember walking out thinking that was fun. That was a good movie. It wasn't this thing Comic Twitter made it out to be. Obviously, I enjoyed it enough that I bought this sick Thor Love and Thunder t-shirt, right? That I got lucky that my theater had. Shirt gang today. And it was fun. I had my qualms with the movie. Jane was done well. I wish we would have got, a little more out of her. I wish we would have got more out of Gore. And I think when I hear criticisms for the movie, in my opinion, what I think would have fixed it is an extra 30 to 40 minutes of runtime. I think for me personally, I think we're past the age where short comic book movies make sense. We are deep into phase 4, right? Let's not pretend like phase 4 just started. We are 4 phases into an over decade-long multiverse story and universe. At this point, short movies, in my opinion, only hurt the movie because we need more details, we need more info, more connectivity. If this would have been a phase 1 movie, I think it would have been dope, right? Beyond for the length. But I think for being in phase 4, we needed that extra 30, 40 minutes of runtime to flesh out some story details. Outside of that, I still loved it. I still thought it was great, man. I had things that I loved. I've gone back to see it twice. Cap, you're going to go see it for like the 3rd time today. So obviously, we're all digging it. Cap, how was it for you?
I overall, like, I really enjoyed it. I agree with most things you say. Definitely needed longer runtime for sure. But overall, like, I enjoyed it for what it was, but at the same time, it was missing something. It was missing a good bit. I felt some of the serious moments were overwashed by humor. Like, there wasn't too much humor. Like, there wasn't too many serious moments that were overwashed by the humor. But at the same time, those serious moments, they didn't really hit the way I wanted them to hit. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I can agree to that for sure.
But overall, I really enjoyed it. It was fun. For what it was fun. Like Gorgon said, for a phase 4 film, I think it should have lasted a bit longer. Should have had a bit more of an impact with the villain and Jane. I don't think Jane should have, spoiler, I don't think Jane should have kicked it so early. I say we maybe could have got another film, maybe another 2 films out of her. A solo or something, even a Disney Plus series, But
well,
I think
I have some thoughts on
Gore.
that. We'll get into that for sure.
Nice.
But what were you going to say about Gore?
Gore, I really liked him, but again, I don't think he should have kicked it so early. Like, he has so much potential to be a multi-movie villain. I don't think he should have been one and done.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree basically all around with what both you guys said. And I think my same criticism is the same as you guys. And I think I could go deeper into some other things that maybe might have not hit me as well as I may have wanted it to. But I really think that all of those little nitpicks that I can even think of all comes back to the initial main criticism of, like you guys are saying, was the time limit. I really think, like, I feel when I say this, a lot of people might take it as like, oh, well, of course the Thor fan wanted a longer movie, which of course, yeah, I do. But I'm saying I mean that as a criticism, in the sense of, like I said, I really think that an extra maybe 20 minutes, maybe 25 minutes could have really helped the film flesh out a couple more things, add a little bit more depth to Gore and
For
Jane's
anybody
story.
watching or listening, I just want to point out exactly what Brother Thor said. If you want to like say, oh, he's just a Thor fan, that's why he wanted. How many minutes did you say it should get? An extra what?
Like 20, 25.
And I, not the Thor aficionado, am saying an extra 30 to 40 minutes. I want more. So if y'all are holding that criticism for bias, you're wrong, because I want even more than the Thor guy wants.
Like I said, hey, I'll take 2 more hours if that's what they'll get. Hey, trying to be reasonable here, you know what I mean? But no, like you said, I really do think that extra time would have helped kind of flesh a couple things out. And plus, too, I think what a lot of people don't realize too, I've seen a lot of criticism about the book being different than the movie and how they left all this stuff out of the book, which, we'll kind of get a little bit more into. But I would like to just say real quick, Jason Aaron's Thor run lasted for 7 years. And there's like at least like almost 36 issues, if not, I probably am missing a couple, but at least 36 issues that cover Gore, Jane as Thor, her eventual fall as Thor, and then her coming, like setting up her return as Valkyrie.
Comics. So there is a lot of material that they had to fit into 2 hours. So while there are things like Gore and a lot of the Jane stuff that I obviously would have loved to get more into, given the 2 hour time constraint of the film, I think they did a really great job of taking the real kind of main themes of that run and condensing it into, like I said, that 2 hour mark. Is there things that I wish we saw more of and got more in depth to? Of course, obviously. But I also understand that this is a movie that has a certain limit. We don't have 7 years to go through the entire story arc like Jason Aaron did. So I would say I think they did a really great job with adapting the kind of main themes from the book into this movie and into the MCU.
I agree. I feel like you said, most of the main themes from the run overall has been adapted well. I think they should have fleshed it out a bit more. But like you say, the main themes were there.
Mm-hmm. And I'll also say too, really quickly before we move on, because I know we got to move on here, but a lot of criticism I've been seeing about Gore specifically is, oh, how are you going to have Gore the God Butcher and you don't even show him butchering gods? Like, he only kills one god. I am going to argue, and I'm going to throw this into the argument. If you read Jason Aaron's run, a lot of the actual god butchering happens off page. A lot of what we see is the aftermath of Gore's rampage and Thor kind of investigating the gods that are already dead. We don't really see him killing a lot. I mean, we do see a couple more than we do in the movie, but I think the movie did actually a really good job of kind of, again, condensing that kind of rampage. And we saw really the main ones, which are Falagar, the big giant one, and then we saw the glimpse of the ones that he had him hanging on the rafters. That
shit was mad.
Exactly. And in my opinion, obviously there's a couple more, but in my opinion, those are like the two main ones from the books that, like, at least from my memory, that I was like, oh shit, like, this dude's serious. So, like I said, I just want to throw that out there. I think they did an actually pretty good job with that. But moving on, I said my little piece about that. Moving on, I want to hear, so we talked about our initial impressions, our like little criticisms, but I want to hear, what was your guys' favorite moment from the movie? If you guys had to pick like one moment that really stuck out to you, or like after you saw the movie, the one kind of thing that you were really thinking about, what would it be? Cap, I want to hear from you first. What did you think?
A main part that stuck out. don't necessarily have a favorite part that stuck out, but the main part that stuck out for me was probably whenever Thor and Zeus were, discussing and
That
back and
whole
forth. That was,
dynamic that was so
yeah,
funny. I loved it. He's like,
that's
he's like, he's like, chill out, baby cake, have some wine.
You know, I've
that's
seen a lot of
probably the standout one.
criticisms that MCU Zeus is just a drunken playboy, right?
Isn't that Zeus in mythology though?
Thank you. It's a running joke that all the problems come from the fact that Zeus was drunk and couldn't keep it in his pants, right?
Literally.
Okay, well, we literally just got that on screen, right? Would you rather this misinterpreted story where he's this like all powerful god all the time and super serious all the time? Because the man wasn't. He was turning into animals to go like, do the deed with humans, right? He's like, hey, y'all should stop that, but I'm gonna go turn into a goat because that one's looking feisty. Like,
yeah. I would argue that this is probably the most accurate Zeus interpretation that we've seen on screen.
And the accent, but the accent actually made it for me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an expert on Greek accents, so I don't want to like say if it was like accurate or not, but I just appreciate the accent in general. I feel like a lot of times when you have people playing like not even just Zeus in particular, but some other pantheon gods, like they don't have an accent of where that god is supposed to be from, and it's just kind of, I always thought weird. So I just appreciate that they gave a Greek god a Greek accent. It just kind of makes sense.
Most of the time it's usually an American accent they have.
Exactly. Us stupid ass Americans.
Nailed it.
Gorgon, what was your favorite part if you had to pick one moment from the film?
This is going to sound a little double deja vu for you and any of our listeners who's listened to us on MCU Rewind. If you guys haven't checked it out, please go listen to those guys. They're super bomb dudes. It was a blast for me and Brother Thor to be able to be on their show and to be able to play their game with them. Not to brag, but I did get the highest score ever on the MCU Rewind show for best predictions.
He
which
beat
means I'm
me
going to
by
be
like a couple
insufferable.
points. And I argue still that Darcy question, that was some snake shit. All right.
But for
I digress.
Me, the moment that in this movie that stood out the most for me, and y'all can call me a hopeless romantic, you can call it what you want, right? But when Odinson is on the boat and they're traveling and he's telling Jane and giving her that heartfelt speech about how I'm in love with you and you're worthy because you made me worthy, and I don't care that like Mjolnir's chosen you, I've accepted it, right? You are a Thor and I love you despite everything going on. I don't care where we go from here. Like all we have is like today, this moment, tomorrow. Like I ate that shit up. Because in order for that moment to exist, he had to go through a lot of emotional growth, right? And we see him in the movie processing and thinking and talking with Korg about and talking to Mjolnir about his relationship with Jane and how he's loved her and has always loved her. And she's the one that got away and he never got to vocalize that. We see that, he left because he didn't understand his feelings. He had to grow to get that. He had to grow in the movie and accept that Mjolnir was no longer his hammer, that Mjolnir was someone else that it had made Thor and chosen as worthy, and that he had a hand in it. He had to grow a lot in order for that one romantic scene to happen. That scene was so much more than just that moment. To me, that scene was the accumulation of everything else in that movie leading up to it. And I really like that moment. Hopeless romantic, absolutely, but I still love that moment.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree. And the way that you even just articulated it, I mean, I couldn't have even said it better myself. That scene really, I think that one scene kind of encapsulates a lot of like Jane's story and Odinson's story. You know what I mean? And the whole, because before the movie came out, we had this kind of discussion before, the whole worthiness thing. And like, since Odinson is worthy, then how does Jane come in the picture? And that line when he says, Mjolnir chose you back when I, was sent to Earth and, I was, made human, your love is what made me worthy. So obviously you're worthy. And like you said, that just kind of line and that scene, it really does hit you home. And for those people that say that this movie is just laughs and gaffs, which don't get me wrong, it definitely is. I would direct them to that scene and say, watch this and tell me the movie does not also have heart,
There's another part that really stands out for me. It's another pretty emotional part. It's whenever all the kids are missing and Thor's like going to find them, blah blah blah. And Heimdallson, Axel in it?
Axel Heimdallson.
He finds them, and then Thor's standing in the cage with them, talking to them, reassuring them it's going to be okay. We're on our way. That part really got me. I really liked that. It was nice. It's like there may have been some humor to it, but at the same time, it's kids. You have to deal with kids in a different way from adults.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think it caught the situation really well, like all the emotional level.
And I really love too how before, I don't know if it's before Thor comes in or when Gore has that awesome kind of creepy scene, but when you see all the kids gathered around and they're telling the story of him creating Stormbreaker, and they're like, he forged it in the heart of a dying star, the same weapon he used to decapitate Thanos. I don't know, just was at being the Thor fan, it's I read these books and stuff, and seeing these kids telling the story of Thor, I don't know, it just I thought that was really cool, and like you said, kind of hit me in the heart a little bit.
It's kind of nice because it's a good reminder that, right, everybody in the MCU is a human, isn't necessarily a superhero, right? But they're still impacted by what happens. And these are people raised knowing who Odinson is, right? He pops in and out regularly of Asgard, just oh, hey, yeah, oh God, that's Thor, that's our guy, yeah, man. And they're telling these stories of this person who they've seen, right? He's not just this superhero that you imagine from around the world, right? And look up to we do as comic readers. He's someone that they know. He's this guy in town, holy crap. No, of course Thor's coming. Dude, he took off Thanos' head. Come on, of course he's gonna save us. It's kind of nice.
Yeah, I love that. And I guess that kind of leads us in. I want to talk about real quick too. Can we talk about Axel Heimdallson? Because I loved that character. I loved every scene that he was in. And I really liked the whole banter between them in the beginning with him wanting to be called Axel. And he's like, oh, it's a singer from Earth, Axl Rose. I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah, man.
And I do want to say too, which, I mean, I don't, want to speak on anything like this. I'm not part of the trans community or anything, but I have seen a lot of criticism of people saying that that's Thor dead naming Axel, or I forget what his Asgardian name even was. I can't remember.
Because he's Axel.
Yeah, exactly. But whatever his Asgardian name is, and Thor's oh, that's your father gave you a strong Viking name, and he's like, no, my name's Axel. To me, again, I don't, I'm not deep into the community, so I do not want to, speak on anyone else's feelings or anything like that. All I want to say about it is just, I don't think that there was ever any confirmation or any allusion to Axel being trans or, anything like that. And the way that I took it, I guess I just want to add a couple, my 2 cents to it. I took it more so as a kind of nod and play on when people from different cultures come to America, like immigrants or whatnot, go to a different culture. And a lot of people, for different reasons, they'll assimilate their name to a more American sounding name. So to me, I took it as kind of a nod at that, as this kid from Asgard, he has this, weird kind of Viking name. I mean, not weird, but for people of Earth might seem a little odd. So he adopts this, more Earth name as Axel. And I don't know, I thought that was more so what it was trying to allude at. I don't think it was, necessarily trying to be problematic. But again, I don't understand the whole depths of that, so I don't want to say anyone is wrong or right. But like I said, that's how I took that scene.
I took it the same. I come from a family of German immigrants, right? And on both sides of my family, and Irish with it. And they, there's even my father directly grew up feeling the differences because he was raised by his grandparents, right? And they fled to the States because they were going to be killed because they wouldn't do, all the things wanted of people of German descent at the time in Nazi Germany. They were like, no, that's not what we're going to do. It's not what we're about. So we're going to fill our boat full of all these people that we can, and we're going to flee to the States, right? My great grandfather was a sea captain, and that was his deal, right? He's like, nope, we're going to fill the boat with everybody, and we're going to head to the States. And when they got here, they changed their name like 2 or 3 different times, the last name, to sound more American. And the grandparents refused to teach the grandkids German because they didn't want them to have any form of accent, right? They wanted it to sound American, not be picked on, not be bullied or anything, like have assumptions made, right? We want you to sound as American as you can be, right? So it's there was this weird dichotomy of where we're from is something that was intentionally left behind to start over in some areas, right? And it's I definitely think there's an interesting story there with immigration and how people choose their new names in new countries. And I think you're right on the money there, because I took it the same in that regard. Not to diminish anyone out there who's trans and related to that, right? What was going on, or felt some sense of it being like, hey, that's not cool, because it absolutely wasn't cool that Odinson wasn't like digging it right at first, right? But he didn't come out of it, I don't think, out of a place of like bigotry. He came out of it, I think, out of a place of respect, right? No, your father raised you to be a Viking warrior. We're Vikings. And then Axel's like, yes, however, we're Earth Vikings now, so I chose my Earth name. Like,
which I think a lot of children of, immigrant parents could probably relate to as well. I mean, I personally am not, but my girlfriend is from Bosnia, and I mean, she hasn't changed her name, but very similar thing. If she were to change her name, I know, her dad would be like, you have a strong Bosnian name, like, you should be proud of that name. So I think it's just kind of a similar thing with Thor. Like, he wasn't trying to be a bigot. He was just, oh, well, Heimdall gave you a strong Viking name. You should be proud of that. But
I like seeing the character, though. I think Axel was a great addition because we never saw him before in any of the Thor movies, right? We never heard mention of him. We did, I think, see what is supposed to be him for a second, if I remember right, Heimdall saving and rescuing at one point in battle, right in the middle of the halls, and I could be wrong on that. I'm rewatching all the other Thor movies right now just to be like, wait a minute, is he there? Like, let me get my magnifying glasses out and enhance, But I thought it was cool that he'd inherited his father's gift of sight to be able to see and commune in ways, and that he was learning to use his power, particularly at the end where they do almost a Shazam homage, right? And he makes all the kids temporarily a Thor. I
love that.
Looked like the Yggdrasil from up top coming down, right? The life tree, which is super symbolic and powerful for them all being, Norse Viking children there. And I thought it was really cool that now you have, Axel Heimdallson with temporary Thor powers just out there getting after it. I definitely think there's a chance that I think there's a pretty large chance we're going to see him again in the MCU. And I think he's going to have a larger role to play, because if he's the one with the sight, should he not be the one who inherits control and command of the Bifrost?
I think for sure. And I'll say too, when he catches Stormbreaker, when they like make their escape, I don't know if anyone else noticed this, but Axel he takes Stormbreaker, puts it down, and he twists it just like how Heimdall would with the sword. So I think that was kind of a slight nod to, oh yeah, Axel is going to be the new, guardian of the Bifrost. And I think that's also why Sif was training him. I mean, they were training all the kids, but I think Korg even specifically says like Axel's picking it up very fast or something like that.
Right.
Cap, what did you think of Axel Heimdallson?
I really liked him. Whenever he first came on screen, I was a wee bit iffy. I was like,
Mhm.
he's just another annoying kid. But as as the film went on, he grew on me. I'm not gonna lie,
Mhm.
he did. He grew on
Yeah.
me,
And I
and
love too his for Asgard. That he delivered
yeah,
that super good.
yes. At the end, whenever he summoned the Bifrost as well, that was probably my favorite part. Oh man, there's so many good parts with him, like the big war cry let out whenever they all turned into mini Thors.
Hmm.
That shit made me smile.
Dude, yeah, that part really kind of hit me in the feels in a special way. I think I might have talked about this a little bit on the MCU Rewind, but I mean, you guys both know probably more than most people how I personally have gotten into these conversations before of, oh, is Thor a name? Is it a title? Like, oh, that person can't be Thor because of this, like this person, blah 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 blah. So I don't know. To me, like while it was obviously like a funny kind of moment, like the girl has the teddy bear and all that. To me, it really like you said, it really just put a smile on my face because it was just like, hell yeah, like all these kids can be Thor. All of these kids can be worthy. They can all be powerful. And I think too, it just was a really great way to, usually more often than not, when kids are in a movie, they're have to be saved. It's like, oh, like what's the like the damsel in distress kind of trope, but like with kids, like they're always powerless and everything. And I just thought it was so awesome that you take these kids that were captured by Gore and are powerless in this cage, and then they become powerful and kind of are able to free themselves. Like, yes, Thor comes and kind of gives them the power, but at the end of the day, they're able to save themselves. And I don't know, that just like really hit me right here in the heart. And I'm just like, fuck yeah, like they can all be Thor. Everyone's worthy. Like, let's go.
If
So yeah, I
anybody
loved
out
it.
there is like, oh my gosh, how come, if Odinson could do this all along, how come he didn't turn other people into Thor before? Like that could have saved so many battles. And that's a fair criticism. But our friends at MCU Rewind pointed out a good deal. That Thor is not like the head god, and the ability to bestow powers normally comes from the head god. And when he did that, the lightning was yellow. His is normally blue, and it's because he was holding Zeus's thunderbolt. And Zeus can, as head god, be like, use this, right? That
Mhm.
happens regularly in mythology. So I definitely think they were onto something when they're like, yes, it was Odinson, but he did it through use of the Thunderbolt for a temporarily moment on it, right? Like
Yeah.
I don't think it's a plot hole as I've seen people talk about on Twitter. I
Mm-mm.
think it's that they didn't that kind of like just glossed over real quick on how it happened, but I
Yeah.
definitely think it has something to do with Thunderbolt more than anything on it, Ryan. I don't think it's something we'll see again. And for a
Hmm.
one-off gag, I thought it was really fun and cool. The teddy bear might have just been humor, but I thought it
That
was
was so good.
so awesome because that girl was so terrified of Gore before,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And this will be a great segue for us to go into more Gore because the Sim fans loving Gore and the Necro Sword, right? Because he that head of the snake off and threw it, and if I remember right, part of it goes super close to her, and she freaks out in the cage, and then now she's a Thor and just laser blasting him out of her
Ah.
teddy bear. I
So dope.
Perfect.
So that kind of leads us into let's talk about the main villain of the whole show, Gore the God Butcher, played by none other than Christian Bale, Batman himself. So what do you guys think of Gore? Did he meet your expectations? Was he a little underwhelming? I know Gorgon's got a
You two
lot.
have this first,
I would say,
actually, and I'm going to close out on this one.
yeah, Gorgon's got a lot. We got a lot to get into with the Necro Sword. So I want to hear from Cap first. What do you think of Gore, the Necro Sword, how he was portrayed in the film? What do you think?
I've a few points on Gore. Overall, I liked him. He's a great villain. Christian Bale played it fantastically. It's
Mm-hmm.
to be expected, really. Um, but at the same time, like it was a wee bit lackluster, just a wee bit, mainly because one, I didn't really like the redesign. Like I think they should have kept some sort of tentacles. Like
Mm-hmm.
yes, stay away from the Voldemort look, but keep the tentacles,
Yeah,
Um,
I could agree with that.
I think like he was menacing enough. He truly was a great villain. Christian Bale just played it phenomenally. Um, but at the same time, like I don't think he should have died so early. I don't think they should have got rid of him so early.
Hmm.
I just wanted to see more gore. You get me? Like
Yeah, I mean, I
I'm
can't
getting greedy.
disagree. Yeah, I can't disagree with that. I'm always a proponent of more gore. I can't disagree with more gore. But like we
Yeah,
were
at least
talking
give
about
us a god
before,
bomb or something.
yeah, hey, you guys know that I was a strong proponent of the God Bomb. I was on the God Bomb train, very, very strong. But like I said before, while I do agree with all that, we got to go back to the original time constraint. You know what I mean? I think a lot of that was unfortunately due to the kind of time constraints that we had on the film. I think if we had again another extra 20, 25, even like Gorgon was saying, 30, 45 minutes, we could have really got a lot more gore content and a lot more deeper. Like I said, I think the movie did a good job with condensing all of that. And I mean, God bombs and all that kind of stuff, that's easily could be a whole nother movie, So I understand why they left it out and kind of simplified, kind of like Thanos, how, they kind of left the Lady Death stuff, in the books. It's like, while I love that stuff in the books, I also understand that that's a lot of meat to get into in a movie. You get what I mean?
It is. It is.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Correct me if I'm wrong, but was there any mention of Null at all? Like with the Necro Sword, was there any reference at all? Anything? Because like I missed the first 5 minutes of the film,
Mm-hmm.
so like
Oh, okay. You missed a
I didn't
good
see his whole
part.
history.
Yeah, so you missed a pretty important. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily important, but I'll say they don't outright say like null symbiotes or whatever. But I personally think, and I know Gorgon agrees with me, so we'll segue into Gorgon's piece here. I definitely think that they're alluding at either null and or symbiotes, like 100%. Again, we just don't know it yet. They're not gonna come out the gate with it, but the seeds have been planted, at least in my opinion. And I'm going to bring it off to Gorgon here because I know that he's going to have a lot more deeper understanding than me. So,
Man.
Gorgon, tell us why God
Um,
is coming. Give us all your thoughts on. I want to know too, like how being the Sim fan and the child of Null himself. What did you think of how they depicted the Necro Sword and the whole symbiote thing, knowing that we weren't going to get outright symbiotes? How do you think it was handled?
So I knew we weren't going to get outright symbiotes because it's far too early to just jump that in, right? Particularly if Null is coming. And mind you, I'm going to say it again for everybody. God is coming. I'm predicting 5 to 10 years we have Null in the MCU. I think they're laying the foundations down early and widespread because MCU's not 100% for how they're going to get there, but I definitely think it's the goal. I really do. They're laying the foundations down everywhere. We can see it from the way the tendrils and stuff touch the end of the sword at the end of Eternals, right? For the Black Knight touching the ebony blade, which has been recently added to being connected to Null through the mythos, through the Black Knight Curse the Ebony Blade mini. If y'all haven't read that, reader or watchers, listeners out there, please do. It's a fantastic book. And it's I loved it a lot. But it's adjacent. For me, I guess let's start with Gore. I really like Christian Bale. I like seeing him play atheist Bale. I know that joke's a little overplayed, but as I think there's a reason Gore's an interesting villain to a lot of people our age, right? Because a lot of people our age have suffered religious trauma. Right. I'm 30, you guys are in that range, right? It's our generation suffered a lot of that globally. And it's made, we are now mathematically the least religious generation in history, right? So with that in mind, the whole idea of someone who spent their life worshiping a God to never have their prayers answered, to just be ignored, to finally meet their gods and their gods be like, no, your purpose is to suffer. I would do the same thing. I would do probably the exact same thing as Gore, and I know we say like Magneto was right, Cyclops was right. I might be the first person to vocalize it, but you know what? In a lot of ways, Gore was right.
Hey, you're in your Nick Fury area, bro.
I can't be mad at him. Gore was right in a lot of ways, right? Like if you know you chose and you just chose to be negligent anyway and be like, followers can be replaced. Like, you know what? Maybe you should have your right to be a god questioned and called out by someone else. Maybe.
Yeah.
What's the point of all that power if you're not going to use it? With great power comes great responsibility. So step up to the plate or step out, you know?
Yeah. And I would obviously I completely agree. And I would argue even too in the books, like I just said, you're in your Nick Fury era. For those out there who are not sure what I'm referring to, in the books, the whole reason that Thor became unworthy in the first place was because Nick Fury told him that Gore was right. And that sentence, exactly, that sentence alone made Thor unworthy. And I would argue at the end, Gore did win. Like while, Thor defeated Gore and stopped the God Bomb in the book, I would say in the end of the day, Gore won because he proved his point that gods are worthless. Gods don't do, basically don't do anything. And that statement alone made Odinson completely unworthy of Mjolnir. So I think in the movie, they do it a good job too with, showing that kind of, struggle and, showing Gore's motivation in the film. Again, obviously, we don't have the time to get into all the real nuances of it, but I think they did a good job with getting us to kind of sympathize with him.
Same. But as for symbiotes and Null in the MCU, I think the biggest thing is the fact that one, they called the Necro Sword the Necro Sword. My spider cat Peter. I have two cats. I have Peter and Miles. They're named after spider people for a reason. This one keeps hopping up. Yeah, this is Pete. I'm gonna have to put him out for a second. Give me just a moment. There you go, Spider Kitty. He wanted a cameo. But yeah, I really like the way they handled the Necro Sword, right? The fact that they called it that's huge, and then the way they talked about it. And when I say they, I mean Odinson and Valkyrie, when they're telling Jane about it, right? They mention that it came from before time, which is important because as far as linear time's understood in the 616, there's very few beings that predate it. And one of those is Null, who forged the Necro Sword out of his earliest children, the symbiote. So right there, they're already acknowledging the age of the sword, that it came from something darker, right? The way it's passed down. I think that's important, the way they alluded to it. And then the way it whispered, I think is important.
Yes. I was just about to say that the voice, I think the voice itself kind of confirms it to me because it's like, whose voice is it? For Cap, I know you didn't see it, but in the beginning, the sword like speaks to Gore and says like, take me, seek out eternity, like kill all the gods. So that's the part that you missed in that first couple 5 minutes.
Right. Nice.
Do not miss it when you go tonight. The first 10 minutes of this before the Marvel credits roll in the beginning, the early ones to set you up, in my opinion, is some of the best Gore performance we got. But the way it talks to him, I think, is important because if y'all read Curse of the Ebony Blade, if you read the Captain America King in Black one-shot and see the way Null's trying to get in his head and stuff, that is very much the way Null talks through things that he has a bit of possession over or control into, even if it's the slightest bit, right? And I think that's important. I definitely think they're laying the Easter eggs for him to come. I like the way they use the shadows, and it's important to remember that what they call it, the shadow realm, right? It's okay. So what is that? It's a place where there's absence of color and light. So it's darkness. Yes. So it's the void. That's where Null comes from. He is god of the void. It's what predated time before the Celestials came and carved light and life into the universe through their use of light, right? I definitely think we're seeing things that could allude to Null in the future. And I really do believe God is coming to the MCU, and I'm going to be insufferable about that until he is. But they called Cortland Cassidy a madman, and he
They
was
did.
right. It just took time to pay off. He just didn't have the vision at the time. I have the vision. I do believe God is coming to the MCU. I
And-
set me on fire and had me running naked through the woods like I'm Eddie Brock in this island arc, but God is coming. I'm calling it now.
Hey, I agree with you, man. Like I said, to me, the voice is like obviously we're not gonna, like we said, they're not gonna say no yet. And I think too, there's a lot of background things that are gonna need to happen over the next couple years with Marvel and Sony for the symbiotes and null thing to come around. But again, it's like, whose voice is it then? Is it just this, like, obviously it's the sword, but you know, the voice comes from somewhere in my mind. So it's like it's gotta be Null. Like, how could it not be Null?
And as far as like tendrils on Gore and his look, I agree 1,000%. Taika's known for taking risk. I think it probably in his mind at the moment seemed riskier to have Bale just go balls deep into this role looking as himself, right? I wish that they in some ways would have started him as that, and as he progressed have it transform him and look more like the comic version. I think I would have respected that a lot. Like if we got 30 to 40 more minutes of expose and 15 to 20 of that was focused on Gore and as he killed, right? Us seeing it up close and seeing the effects the sword had on him. I think the movie would have been perceived better. I think it would have given us a better look at Gore, right? There at the end to have him go from being this monstrous thing back to like a more humanoid thing, right? While he's there at eternity. I think would have made it more heartfelt and impactful for the audience in a lot of ways who didn't have a reason to care for Gore, right? I think that could have changed a lot for me for the movie. I would have liked it. You know, Christian Bale made a joke in an interview when he was reading it that he's going to Feige and like, oh man, this guy's running around the universe and just a thong out. That's not me. I'm not your guy. Like, okay, but why not, bro? Give me some Gore cheeks. Like, I'm just kidding. Like, I mean, give me some Gore cheeks.
I say
right?
we got the Hems cheeks, so we got to get the Bale cheeks, man.
Yeah,
like
let's go for it, right? Like, why
come on,
not?
Christian, what are you doing?
Yeah, give me, and I think the use of the void was very tendrily, right? There at the end, in particular when he's in his little void realm, shadow realm, however you want to choose to refer to it. I'm just gonna call it the void as a symbiote fan, right? But it was very tendrily, very tentacly in the way the things moved and wrapped almost like a cage. And I must remind y'all that Clintar is not a species. In their native tongue, Clintar is their word for cage. So for all intensive purposes, in that moment, Gore had them in a Clintar. And that's important to consider. And I'm going to hop off my symbiote trail there. I'm going to leave the episode listeners as watchers to digest and invest in that. I just really want y'all to take a moment and consider it, that was a Clintar in that moment.
I love it. And I am fully on board. God is coming, and I'm all here for it. But moving on, so we talked about Gore. We got to mention the lady of the hour, the mighty Thor herself, Natalie Portman, returning as the mighty Thor, Jane Foster. Obviously, again, you guys already know my thoughts about this, and I'll have you guys know that Natalie Portman answered my question on the Ask Marvel whatever. So, you know, we're basically best friends now. So but what did you guys think of Nat Ports coming back as Mighty Thor? Yeah, Cap, let's get your thoughts first. What did you think?
I wasn't expecting it to be as good as it was, but man, she played that role well. Everything about it, just how she portrayed the character was fantastic. Switching from just typical Jane Foster to Mighty Thor. Oh man, it was great. I loved it all.
Yeah, I agree all around. While again, there's things that I wish we could have got a little deeper into. I thought that they condensed her arc fairly well. Like I said, obviously there's some other things that, would have been cool to get a little bit more into, maybe a little bit more of her cancer, like showing her battling that. I would have loved to see a little bit more of that. But again, this was a long run that they had to condense into one movie. And I theorized a long time ago that, spoiler alert, that they were going to not necessarily kill her off. We'll talk
A
about that
little late
later.
for that.
Yeah, exactly. But that she would die at the end of this movie. So I've always been under the assumption that they were going to condense basically her entire arc as the Mighty Thor into this movie. So given that kind of tall order, I thought they did a great job. I thought she was relatable. I thought she was funny. She was powerful. She was badass. She did some things with Mjolnir that we have never seen happen before. And I gotta say too, this is my absolute favorite part of the whole movie: the scene where Gore calls her Lady Thor. And I said this on another podcast the other day, but I gotta reiterate it for everyone out there when she says, first of all, it's Mighty Thor. And if you can't say Mighty Thor, I'll also accept Dr. Jane Foster. Like that, that scene was so badass. My theater wasn't like very reactive. Like I don't think anyone cheered or anything in any part of the movie. But I was like, yeah, when that happened, like I could not contain myself. Again, you guys both know I have gotten into this exact conversation with plenty of people on the internet, in real life. I've had this conversation many, many, many a times. I mean, everyone out there, you can go look at my pinned tweet on my Twitter, and it basically says exactly what she says in the film. But to see that part in the movie and for her to say that in the movie, I was just like, the rest of the movie could have had nothing and just had that scene, and I would have loved it. Like I said, that part for me was just so badass. And then she does her catchphrase, the "eat my hammer." Perfect. I freaking loved it.
It was good.
Yeah, but Gorgon, what did you think? Besides my nerd out moment, what did you think of Netports?
So when I see these movies, right, I think I called you immediately, but you were in the theater seeing it, right? So I sent a message in the group chat, and then immediately, like, my phone rings, and it's Jared, right? And for those of y'all who don't follow Jared on Twitter as comic readers, y'all should. Jared Webb.
Yes.
He's a great guy, super knowledgeable on comic stuff. But first and foremost, that man is a film expert. That man loves movies and film and cinema, and he has a lot of good things regarding that he points out. And he and I were discussing Jane in particular immediately after, right? And he was, at the moment, if I remember right, he was like, I kind of wanted more of her stuff with the Avengers. Yeah, but this wasn't an Avengers movie.
Agreed.
This was a Thor movie, right? So
Yeah.
where would it make sense, right? I think when we're talking about the condensation of a run, it's important to remember, like you pointed out, one, they're doing like 7 years of stuff thrown down into one movie. That's a lot. A lot. And two, it's a Thor movie. So there's a whole lot of other stuff of a run that's not going to make it there. I really think the ending is ambiguous, in my opinion, because it says Thor will return.
They don't specify
it does
what
not
Thor.
say which Thor.
Yes.
And it is, I think it's important to note that they showed her in Valhalla with Heimdall. They didn't have to do that. We as the audience could have just accepted Jane's dead. They didn't. They gave us Heimdall there, brought him for a moment. And I think it's important for you guys out there who haven't read, for those of y'all who do know where this is going, Jane becomes head of the Valkyries. And carry the heroes over from one life to the other, and that thing. And she repeatedly, as head of the Valkyries, regularly picks up Mjolnir again for stints, drops Mjolnir and goes back to lead, up and down, right? But she maintains where she is now as head of the Valkyries. And I think that's that's important.
Mhm.
I definitely think that's something that we might see in the future in the MCU is Jane's return. Maybe
Oh
not
yeah.
as Thor, but
Yeah.
as head of the Valkyries, and particularly with the quote unquote last Valkyrie, right?
Mhm.
Being there in Asgard as its king now, living. The thing is, there must always be a set of Valkyries. Who else is
Yes,
going to,
sir.
carry the heroes over? The same way there must always be a Thor.
Mhm.
We have a Thor.
If I can put my theory hat on for a second, I think you're right on the money here, Gorgon. And I'm gonna say one, she is for sure coming back as Valkyrie, or a Valkyrie. I don't want to say Valkyrie, but I would say too, I am gonna bet my bottom dollar that we are gonna get a Valkyrie either show or movie with Natalie Portman and Tessa Thompson headlining it. I feel like that's like there's no way that's not going to happen. Like they were so good together in this movie, and I think a lot of the reception, at least I've seen, whether you like or don't like the movie, people love them as characters. So I think it's like easy money to bring them back and have them headline a show or movie together, and then that can also lead into whatever's next for Thor Odinson. Like have it, be our kind of in between point. So I think for sure
Ray Bill.
she's yes, and Better Ray Bill. So I think she's for sure going to come back, and I think after her experience on this movie, she's going to be more willing to come back and reprise that role more so than ever. And plus, too, we were talking about it in the chat. Who can say no to that Marvel money? You know what I mean? Like you can say all you want, but once you get that Marvel bag in front of your face, I think it's pretty. It won't be too hard to bring her back.
Who can say more to no to or who can say no to more Natalie Portman? Not me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's easy money there, easy money. But yeah, like you said, I think that was the whole intention of showing her in Asgard was to set her up to come back in the future. I think if she was one and done and we just like she was not going to come back, we wouldn't have got that Valhalla scene. But the fact that they included that, like I said, in my opinion, just kind of proves like we're for sure going to see her again. And I also do want to throw out too, I thought it was beautiful how, like I said, obviously I think that they added the Valhalla scene to kind of set her up for the future. But I also just thought it was so beautiful that, we established early on in the movie that you can only go to Valhalla if you die in battle. So like we see Sif is on the battlefield, but the battle's over. So she technically can't go to Valhalla because she survived the battle. Well, we see Jane, Mighty Thor, she does not die in battle. She dies in Odinson's arms. But the reason that she's able to enter Valhalla is because she died fighting her battle with cancer. And her battling cancer made her a true warrior. So even though she didn't die in like a physical battle of like a sword piercing her, she died from her fight with cancer, making her a warrior just like anybody else in Asgard. And that's why she was able to go to Valhalla. And I just thought that was such a beautiful kind of moment. I feel like some people might like argue that point, like, oh, well, technically, blah, blah, blah. But I don't know. I think that's beautiful. I thought that was great.
I like that. I never thought about that before, about the battling with cancer and that being
Mhm.
her ticket into Valhalla. That's a new one. I like that.
Yeah, because like I said, in the beginning of the movie, we see, like I said, they kind of establish like, no, you have to die like in the battle. Like again, Sif was in that battle, but the battle ended. So like then she can't go to Valhalla. So
Yeah,
like I
they never
said,
really specified what kind of battle.
exactly. So, like I said, and I mean, maybe I'm thinking too much into it, and this isn't like my original theory either. I've had this conversation with a couple other people in numerous different chats, but like I said, that's how I took it. Is like I said, she lost her battle with cancer, and she fought. She was fighting her cancer this entire time, and what just because it's not a physical person, that doesn't mean that she wasn't fighting. It doesn't mean she's not a warrior. And I think that easily gives her access to the halls of Valhalla.
No, I get
Yeah, I
that.
can get behind that. Yeah.
For those of y'all who aren't aware out there too, Taika Waititi watched his mother go through breast cancer. as a kid, and a very aggressive battle with it. So I would not be surprised if that was 100% Taika's intent, right? He made it clear from the start, we will show that she's struggling with cancer and all that because it's important to him.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I definitely can get into that theory a lot. I like that a lot.
Yeah, and I would say too, just on personal note too, people who are battling with cancer or unfortunately, lose that fight with cancer, they are warriors. You know what I mean? They're all warriors, and they fight harder than probably anybody will ever have to fight in their life. So, like I said, I think that's what's really so important and so great about Jane's story is, showing someone like that and showing that they are powerful, like they are a warrior, even though they might, be in this, sick and frail kind of body. That doesn't mean that they're not fighting, that they're not still, for lack of a better word, worthy,
Cap, you've seen it twice. You're going for your third time today, right?
No, tonight is my second time.
Tonight's the second time. So
Yeah.
what, other than like not missing the first 10 minutes, what is something you're hoping to see differently going for your second time on it?
I'm actually hoping to pick up on less humor and really indulge in more of the themes, like the main themes. I want to try. See, I have this problem with my first screening of any film. I don't really dive too deep into what's
You're more
being
in the
said.
experience.
Yeah, I'm just stuck in the experience. I'm enjoying it for what it is. It's not until after where I really start to pick up, that's a nod to such and such, this happened, that happened, So I'm really looking forward to picking up on more of the themes, what it's referencing, stuff like that.
Let me know if you like gore more a second time. I feel like a large problem, and you kind of hit the nail on the head earlier with this is, and I have this also with a lot of Thor movies. Don't hate me, but I feel like the Thor movies have picked incredible villains who shouldn't be solo movie villains. Particularly with the last two more than the first two, for sure.
Agreed.
With Hela and then with Gore. I feel like if they would have given us a more in-depth look at those two villains, more time with them on their own, right, and watching them develop and grow, that we would have, I don't want to say cared more for the villain, right, because that sounds weird, but yeah, cared more about that villain and what's going on with them. It would have added just more depth and more layers. And I'm a big Hela fan in the comics. She's incredibly powerful, that woman. Oh my God, she's terrifying. And when her and Thanos are together, they should be feared, I think, ahead of many, many, many couples and singles within all of Marvel Comics. Those two together is beyond terrifying. Holy crap.
Yeah. I got one couple that can beat them.
When I hear people talk about, well, if Thanos comes back, what do you mean if Thanos comes back? Because the only stipulation should be when he comes back, Hela is right there with him. And that's happened, right? There's so many cool things they could do with some of these villains instead of just a single movie. And that's something that I guess no matter how many times I watch Ragnarok, and I love Ragnarok so much, it's probably my favorite of all the Thor movies thus far. I just wish we got something to confirm Hela's still there.
Yeah, I completely agree.
I almost wish we got, although like I like the way he died, set up for the future and stuff. I still feel like two movies or a movie and a show could have done justice for writing off Gore more than one movie. And maybe that'll change for you on your second viewing.
On that note, I actually have to shoot now because my screening is 9 minutes. So.
Oh shit! All right, yeah, let's get out of here though. But
let's get out of here. Thanks for nerding out, brother.
Yes, thanks for nerding out with us, Cap. As always, it's a pleasure. You go enjoy your second viewing and let us know what you come back with on that. And with that, I'll just say, see you guys next time, right?
Yeah, for all of our listeners and viewers out there, thank y'all for tuning in. Follow us on Twitter. Follow Cap later on Twitter to see what his thoughts are after his second viewing of Thor: Love and Thunder. We hope you guys all have a banger day.
It's been wonderful, guys. See you later.
I can do this all day.